So here we are in the final chapter of The Alan Wake Files by Clay Stewart. Look at this loading screen go. I guess I should actually put in a headset and make sure we're not listening to the dumbest of music, huh? This is fun. Perfect. Oh yeah. Alright, Bright Falls. A History. The following article is taken from a larger work, Bright Falls, A History, edited by Conrad Breaker. Copies of the book can be easily located at the town's library or bookstore, but this chapter was found among Agent Nightingale's effects, cut from the book with a razor. When contrasting the content of this chapter to the rest of the fairly benign book, it's easy to see why it appealed to Nightingale. A History of Oddities in Bright Falls by James Alvord. For the residents of Bright Falls, a sleepy town of only a few hundred, strange events that may seem like an aberration in most communities of its size have become commonplace. Research into multiple Pacific Northwest news archives has revealed that the area has actually been something of a hotbed of tall tales and paranormal rumors since at least the 1850s. Some stories predate official statehood for Washington, when Bright Falls was a mountain community of native tribes mingled with white American fur trappers and hunters who had ventured west into the Washington Territory. Bigfoot, of course. One furry creature that was never successfully trapped is the Sasquatch, the Lummi tribal name for Bigfoot. Reports of sightings, alleged foot tracks, and an abundance of unexplained sounds abound in the forested area near Cauldron Lake. Lummi tribal legends include stories of a large, ape-like creature that go back several centuries. Printed accounts date back to the first days of journalism in the Northwest. One such early account involved Mountain Mike Callahan, a native of Missouri who had been trapping in the Oregon and Washington territories for decades. Not to be mistaken for Mountain Tim, the JoJo character. Watch Steel Ball Run on Netflix. Read the manga. Steel Ball Run, best part. Considered a stable, unflappable man who had seen everything in the woods, he presented himself to his acquaintances as a true adapted son of the forest, clad in buckskin with his trademark beaver fur hat. In 1857, however, Callahan had been camped on the shores of Cauldron Lake when locals reported a bizarre animal bellowing sound across the lake, followed by sustained human screaming. Bright Falls residents spoke of seeing Callahan, dressed only in his red flannel union suit, running barefoot through the town, his eyes wild with fright. Callahan was found 2 miles outside of town the next day, eyes wide open, shivering, his formerly dark brown mane of hair now completely white. Callahan never spoke again, so it is impossible to know for certain what he saw and heard. He died 9 months later in the Olympia Asylum for the Afflicted. Bright Falls residents, however, formed the opinion that the incident must have involved an up-close encounter with the Sasquatch. Modern-day sightings of Bigfoot-like creatures are numerous, particularly in the mountainous areas of Washington state. An internet database of reported sightings by state, for example, lists the number for California in the 20s, and a similar result for the state of Oregon. Washington, however, lists more than 700. A great number of auditory, quote-unquote, sightings, strange sounds that are not from any known human or animal source, have occurred in the vicinity of Cauldron Lake. A dark cloud. Sasquatch is not the only legendary creature rumored to reside in the area. Everyone's heard of the Loch Ness Monster, but fewer people know of our own shadow beast of Cauldron Lake. It has never gained a catchier name than that because people have never agreed on just what it is. What exists in local legend is a string of similar rumors that may or may not be related. One of these legends traces back to 1977, when a young couple engaged in amorous pursuits near the shore of the lake was surprised by what appeared to be an inky dark cloud that floated in the air above the water. This was accompanied by instant storm-like conditions, though the day above them was clear and starry. The names of both people were withheld in press coverage at the time as they were underage, and there was a possible investigation into misdemeanor activity ongoing, but there were anonymous quotations from both witnesses that described snake-like tendrils emerging from the cloud, and an unearthly shrieking sound accompanying the storm sounds that emerged from the floating shape. Oh, it's just that Kirby boss. Just Kracko. You know, you just gotta wait for him to spit a little Waddle Dee at you, and then you gotta spit it back. It's no problem, kids. Don't worry about it. It was enough to send two half-clad teenagers running away from their clandestine sanctuary and towards their homes. Whether snake-like extensions are related to stories in the 1800s about flying serpents in Utah and other parts of the western United States territories is unknown. But it does connect with several other accounts of dark, airborne events that have been cited in significant numbers since the mid-1970s. Another particular sighting serves to underscore the contrast and consequent lack of agreement on the legend. In 1975, Ingrid Peterson reported a dark, brontosaurus-shaped creature arising from the lake, its neck extending 40 feet above a massive torso. She could not describe detailed features, such as eyes or teeth in the creature, but swears that it had a tangible, fleshy form above the nebulous objects described by other witnesses. The consistent thread is that this too seemed as though it were made from darkness itself. Peterson's account was largely dismissed, however, because of her history of alcoholism. Fair. The feathered serpent. Other accounts of a lake creature are demonstrably inaccurate. For a few years around 1978 to 79, it was referred to as Quetzalcoatl, or the feathered serpent of ancient Aztec legend. Local native tribes made a public protest of this ignorance. Chillicotecock chief Thomas Deerchaser was quoted as saying, "Not only is that a southwestern Mexican thing, but that Quetzalcoatl isn't even a monster. It's an Aztec deity. It's a sky god. It's not supposed to be some scary thing. We got plenty of scary stuff to talk about up here in the Northwest without resorting to that. Some people are plain ignorant." When asked to elaborate on the quote-unquote scary stuff that is more local, Chief Deerchaser referred to the Sasquatch, the flying snakes, and the spirit-touched state young men went into as a part of a life passage. "But we don't really believe in any of that, except the last one," he said. "Rites of passage are scary enough. Ghost stories and monster stories are just for entertainment." He further noted that, quote, "You want stories about sea creatures? You should talk to the Quinault tribe down by the coast in Dahola. They're full of that stuff. But if you want dark creatures from the lake, I got nothing." Shadows everywhere. Beyond the shores of the lake, other sightings of smaller dark creatures go further to confuse the myth. Shadow dogs, dark humanoid shapes, black bird-like creatures, even dark versions of plant life enter the mix of legends. The strangeness even extends to inanimate objects. Rusted cars found in treetops, waterlogged boats in the middle of the woods, too far from the lake to be carried there by humans. There are so many possibilities that it's impossible to nail down any one creature, even one type of creature, that occasionally terrifies this small town. Officials in law enforcement have traditionally been silent on the issue, but we were able to get an off-the-quote record from one officer on condition of anonymity. "We think the stories are bunk," the officer said, "but ghost stories have their uses, you know. In my line of work, anything that keeps the kids from getting into trouble at night is a good thing." Lights in the sky. Paranormal activities and other strange events have not been limited to creature sightings. In 1901, before the invention of the airplane, and before the widespread introduction of electricity to Bright Falls, residents reported a series of incidents involving hovering lights just above the trees. The sightings occurred on 4 separate nights throughout the summer of that year, with each incident reported by multiple people. One resident, Tobias Crane, created an oil painting of the scene decades later from his childhood memories. The painting, called Floating Lights over Cauldron Lake, now resides in the private collection of Dr. Emil Hartmann. It depicts children by the shores of the lake pointing skyward, while strange lights illuminate the water's surface. Dr. Hartman's collection, while not on public display, is reputed to be one of the largest gatherings of art depicting bizarre, unnatural phenomenon. It is unknown whether these strange lights are related to more recent rumors of illuminated messages found in nooks and crannies around Bright Falls. None have ever been photographed, but multiple reports from disparate sources certainly point to a trend. Local law enforcement seemed less enthusiastic about these reports. "We never caught anybody at it," said our same anonymous source, "but you can bet that if we do, we'll give these kids a little talking to. We got our eye out for any kind of mischief." A survey of local teens produced blanket denials of vandalism, along with several shaky reports of sightings. "There are messages," said one young woman. "I haven't seen them myself, but my boyfriend's cousin did, and so have my sister's friends. All different messages, too. Strange things like walk in light, and these odd symbols and arrows, stuff like that." Despite the lack of photographic evidence, a few artist renderings of the strange messages have been recreated with the assistance of the alleged witnesses. A common thread that gives the story some credibility is that all witnesses have described the symbol of a torch alongside the bizarre messages. The Scratching Hag of Bright Falls. Some stories seem designed specifically to scare children. The legend of Granny Claus, the Scratching Hag of Bright Falls, seems to be a perverse twisting of the traditional image of the kindly old grandmother who will welcome youngsters in for a plate of warm cookies. Cookies. Oh, yes, please. Variations abound, but the core narrative mirrors that of Baba Yaga, an old woman who emerges from the forest at night, sometimes walking, sometimes flying on what appears to be a stone dish of some sort. It's a mortar and pestle? Jeez. The Baba Yaga disrespect. Okay, anyway. The rumor is that she eats children, a detail of the story that resurfaces every time a child is reported lost. Her home, which has never been seen, much less photographed by current town residents, is somewhere deep in the forest and is said to stand on giant chicken legs. This allows the house itself to change locations at will, making it impossible to determine a single location in the forest for her residence. There are disagreements about her physical appearance, perhaps due to her penchant for darkness, but the various versions all speak of unnaturally wide open eyes and extended claw-like nails from her withered old hands. If the weird eyes and claws weren't enough, she's said to carry an extra darkness around her, making nights even darker. Not many people believe this legend. Whereas the other paranormal phenomena all have their true believers, this story is primarily perpetuated by parents who want to keep their children safe from the true dangers of the forest. It's also shared among children themselves who love a good ghost story, and, as a result, the details appear to have changed and wildly elaborated over the years. A fairy-attached couple. Other oddities have been attributed to paranormal causes in the area. In 1957, Vern and Norma Bergdale, longtime Bright Falls residents who were married for 43 years, died almost simultaneously on opposite sides of town, both of apparent natural causes. Newspaper accounts of the time noted that their dual passing was evidence that they truly shared a soul. Private letters from local archives, however, made reference to an unsavory bargain Vern Bergdale had made, and that strange forces were involved with their passing. A rumor that was never confirmed, as only one eyewitness was present with Norma Bergdale at the time of her death, was that she seemed to exhale a small black cloud before she collapsed and died. The witness, Betsy Sergstrom, thought it very odd because Norma didn't smoke, and there was no odor that would explain the dark, somehow metallic puff. My friends have always told me that I imagined it, Sergstrom insisted, but I have no imagination. I saw what I saw. The curious case of Mr. August. The most recent and well-documented oddity to have occurred in Bright Falls was the case of Clark August III, the music industry entrepreneur made even more famous by the documentary film The August Year by legendary German filmmaker Klaus Snacht. Footage of August early in the film revealed an almost comical portrait of an eccentric man in a dirty business suit, playing a game of survival in the forests outside of Bright Falls. Surely, people thought, this would be a short-lived experiment. But as winter drew near, it became apparent that what had appeared to be comedy was in fact a deadly earnest matter. People in Bright Falls today still argue over which part was the most extraordinary. The fact that August miraculously survived the winter in near-perfect health, or the fact that he disappeared shortly afterward. All sorts of theories have accompanied his disappearance, with some of them coupled with theories of his initial survival. Was there a bargain that helped him through the winter, only to have payment extracted in the spring? Alien abduction and dark spiritual forces have also been raised as possibilities. The unexplained howling sounds, the noontime eclipse fog, and the forest micro-tornadoes that appeared early in the season have all served to find the rumors of an unnatural ending to August's life. Sheriff Sarah Braco was flummoxed by this forensic anomaly. This is not like any missing persons case I've ever seen. If he froze, if he got killed by a wild animal, if he drowned, there'd be physical evidence. There's nothing. Even Snacht, who's researched the details of this case more than anyone, is at a loss. It's such an unexpected twist, he was quoted as saying. You think you're at the end of a strange story, and then it has this incredible denouement that throws everyone. We don't even have answers to the main part of the story, which is what happened that winter, and now we may never know what followed. It's difficult to get an explanation from someone who has vanished from the face of the earth. Oh, we do. We had 2 more chapters. Now we got exhibits. The clippings in this section represent an array of artifacts spanning decades and ranging from obvious choices, those directly about Wake, to more obscure ones. It's clear why Nightingale would want an article about Wake's criminal past, but why, for example, would he be interested in a woman who drowned 30 years earlier, with no apparent connection to Wake? And why note a natural disaster report roughly a week after her death? Did he suspect a link between the two? It's possible that there was a connection to some of the events only hinted at in Agent Nightingale's notes. Or, possibly, he felt a need to put together a comprehensive portrait of the town he was studying, as though Bright Falls were as important a person of interest as Alan Wake. The true prizes, however, are the photographs of Diver's Isle. The interest for Nightingale is obvious. The origin of the photographs, however, is a complete mystery. Much of Nightingale's motivation for these pieces may remain an enigma, but publishing these as part of the comprehensive collection may light the pathway for one whose torch burns brighter than mine. Volcanic Quake Sinks Island, Damages Power Plant by Cynthia Weaver, special to the Bright Falls Record. Monday, July 20th, 1970. On the morning of July 18th, a severe volcano-related earthquake caused significant damage to the power plant run by the Bright Falls Light and Power, as well as many homes in the area. Seismic monitoring equipment at the U.S. Army Research Base nearby measured the quake at 7.3 on the Richter scale. The epicenter is believed to be directly beneath Cauldron Lake. The most spectacular consequence of the lake is that Diver's Isle, which once sat in the middle of the lake, has now been completely submerged. One of the deepest caldera lakes in the Cascade Mountains, Cauldron Lake is no stranger to seismic activity. This quake, however, is believed to be the most severe in the area in the 20th century. While some area homes were damaged, very few were considered catastrophic, and there were no injuries. Sten Ferrick, a structural engineer and resident of Bright Falls, explained that, quote, most of the houses are made from logs, or they're otherwise wood-framed. That gives a certain flexibility that you don't get in more rigid structures. Brick houses might keep the big bad wolf out, but they're not so good in an earthquake. Those expletive just crumble like an expletive house of cards. The town of Bright Falls was without power for approximately 24 hours. Several of the turbines at the power plant remain damaged, but 3 of them are now operational. We got enough hydropower for the immediate area, said C.J. Chapman, a spokesman for the Bright Falls Light and Power. We're just not exporting any outside our area, and that's a big source of our income. We'll all be glad when the structure checks out and we can all get the turbines up and running. To be perfectly frank, we're bleeding money here. The scene at Cauldron Lake has drawn a significant crowd of local bystanders. It's so strange. Diver's Isle just gone, just like that, said Carol Troop, a longtime area resident. I used to swim there as a kid. We all did. We'd sunbathe on the rocks and then dive off the edges. It was so deep, even right next to the island, so it was safe to go in head first. And there was a cabin in the middle, though I don't think it belonged to anybody. I never remember going in it. Funny, 'cause you'd think we would. Carl Stuckey, a local high school student, described his shock at seeing the island gone. Weird to see all of these people around the lake, talking, pointing at the empty water. I guess if you weren't from around here, you'd wonder what we were all pointing at. Diver's Isle lives on in our memories, and somewhere under the water, of course. No photographs of the island could be located for this story. Some citizens have expressed concern because of the volcanic aspect of the quake, but local officials have been quick to reassure the populace. There won't be any rivers of lava heading your way, said Sheriff Stephen Deming. We checked with the Army Seismic Station and the science guys at the University of Washington. They've assured us that the eruption wasn't that kind. Sometimes volcanic structures just collapse on themselves. The red-hot stuff is pretty dramatic, but often, most of the action is underground. The town remains on alert for aftershocks, however, which are common after a quake of this magnitude. But in general, life goes on as normal. We have quakes here all the time, said Stuckey. This one was just a little different because of the island, and it was a little bigger. It's not like anyone died, commented Trope. I had some broken dishes, and some of the food spoiled in the fridge warmed up. That's about it. All right. I think they're a little calm about a 7.3, but you know, as long as nobody got hurt, it all works out. We got what we got. All right. Saturday, July 11th, 1970. Barbara Yeager, A Beacon of Light, 1945 to 1970. Barbara Yeager, longtime resident of Bright Falls, died on July 10th, an apparent drowning in Cauldron Lake. She was 25 years old. She had no immediate family in the area, but is survived by her companion, Thomas Zane. They were roommates. Yeager was a renowned beauty and the 3-time winner of the Miss Deerfest pageant. She was such a pretty girl, said Joy Miller, a friend and classmate in elementary school, but she never used it to her advantage. She was humble and kind to everyone. Part of the mystery of her death is that she was a very capable swimmer. There was no evidence of foul play, however, and no investigation of the death is planned by local law enforcement. Friends in Bright Falls remember Yeager's warm, maternal presence. No, she was a relatively young woman and never had any children of her own. Her home-baked muffins at community events were famous. She didn't have bake sales. She had bake giveaways, one friend noted. Her generosity was amazing. She just warned everyone around her. Wherever Barbara was, you felt at home. Crime Author has his own police intrigue. By Chris McGurk, The New York Tattler. Alan Wake, the newly minted crime thriller, The Sudden Stop, provided some thrills of his own Friday night. A warrant has been issued for his arrest after an alleged assault on Gazette photographer Peter Viladson, which includes the charge of leaving the scene of the crime. According to Viladson, Wake, quote, drove the camera into my freaking eye with a closed fist while Viladson attempted to take a picture after a gala cocktail party to celebrate the publication of the book. Quote, I was taking a picture. No harm, said Viladson. That's what photographers do, we should know. His own wife is a photographer. Photographer Alice Wake was apparently not at the scene of the incident. She was reached by telephone later, but refused comment. Her exhibit, Inflammatory, opens at the Bayvip Gallery in Chelsea on March 21st. Wake was no longer at the scene when police arrived. NYPD issued the warrant on charges of assault and battery. He got out of there fast right after it happened, Viladson said. He yells at me, something like, party's over, moron! He slams the thing right in my eye. He didn't have to yell. Viladson posed for reporters while being questioned by police. pointing to an unquestionably ugly and swollen bruise surrounding his eye socket. Wake's representative, Barry Wheeler, issued a statement this morning on Wake's behalf and answered some questions posed to him by reporters shortly afterward. The statement read, quote, Alan Wake regrets the misunderstanding that occurred at the Sudden Stop Gala last night. He would like to reiterate his gratitude to and appreciation for all of his readers and trust that they will enjoy reading The Sudden Stop as much as he enjoyed writing it. Such misunderstandings are common when the private activity of writing meets with the public activity of book promotion. When asked if Wake should turn himself in, Wheeler responded with some evasiveness. Al's a straight-up guy. He'll do the right thing. When pressed about what the right thing was, Wheeler replied, It's unclear at this point who actually did the assaulting. A camera with an exploding flashbulb right in your face can be pretty shocking. I've almost had a heart attack because of some of your paparazzi pals before. I'm not saying Alan even touched the guy, but you gotta understand, might have just been a startled instinct. When asked if it was Wheeler himself who whisked Wake away after the incident, he had no comment. It was him, all right, Vladson claimed. The roly-poly guy. I was only half blinded. It was definitely him. This is not Wake's first brush with the law, according to public records, and battery in particular seems to be a trend. Minneapolis police arrested an Alan Wake with a similar description for public drunkenness and battery in 1998. Charges of disorderly conduct and battery were filed, though the battery charge was dropped in West Hollywood a year later. Neither incident resulted in jail time. New York Tadler, January 14th, 2006. Bright Falls Sheriff Department, deputies report narrative. The date is scratched out. The time is 01:33. This is an 11:31 domestic disturbance. Reporting officer, Deputy Mulligan. Origin, the 911 distress call originated with Miss Janet Shore of 28 Redwood Place, neighbor of Andrew and Sarah Davis. Mrs. Shore reported shouting and smashing sounds, including breaking glass. Investigation. Officers responded to the distress call logged at 1:33 a.m. from Mrs. Shore. Officers forced their way into the residence at 34 Redwood Place after repeated attempts to speak to the occupants were met with silence. The house turned out to be unoccupied, but with major physical damage to the interior. Deputy Mulligan interviewed the caller, Mrs. Shore, and insisted there had been no history of domestic violence at Davis' residence. Nice young couple. They hadn't informed any neighbors of travel plans, and after midnight is an unusual time to run errands, so the Davises are now considered missing persons, with a likelihood of foul play. The physical evidence is puzzling. There was significant damage inside the home, but it seemed to emanate from certain points in the room. The furniture in the main room is smashed against perimeter, as though there was a centrifugal force in center spinning everything outward. The lab is investigating a black soot-like substance found in small traces at the scene. No evidence of incendiary devices, and no other suggestion of attempted arson. The power outage at the house is another anomaly. No other houses in the neighborhood were affected. Missing persons profile. Married couple, both white, early 30s, both medium builds. Wife, quote, wears a lot of black, according to witnesses. Not sure of significance of remark. The husband worked in insurance. Wife had an internet-based home business, according to neighbors. No known enemies. No dangerous habits. Both read a lot of mystery fiction, stayed at home, led quiet lives. While my Freedom of Information Act request did confirm that Nightingale was not an official business, one can only wonder what the ongoing investigation of an unrelated matter refers to. U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, request number blah 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 blah. Subject, Nightingale, Robert. Dear Mr. Stewart, this is in response to your Freedom of Information Act, FOIA request noted above. We cannot furnish records related to Special Agent Nightingale, as they remain classified due to the ongoing investigation of an unrelated matter. I can inform you, however, that Agent Nightingale is no longer employed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Over 13 months ago, Agent Nightingale's partner was killed in the line of duty. The trauma related to this event triggered a severe mental breakdown and the subsequent substance abuse problem you refer to in your correspondence. Our records indicate that he ventured to Bright Falls following his discharge from the Bureau, but we have no knowledge of and bear no responsibility for his activities there. Furthermore, we have no files relating to shadow men, lake creatures, ravenous crows, or any of the other bizarre supernatural fauna you describe. Bob Nightingale was a solid, dependable agent who was not able to overcome his tragic circumstances. His current whereabouts remain unknown. Sincerely yours, Pablo Rivera Diaz, Section Chief, Record Information Dissemination Section, Records Management Division. And the afterword. We almost done. Gonna be sad to see it go away. The preceding investigation was conducted at great personal cost. The night I discovered Bright Falls, I left my wife Anna and our newborn son Milo on a quest for a man who had appeared to me in a vision of dreams. Anna never understood the importance of my visions, never appreciated that they had significance that extended beyond our petty lives into the world beyond. Sometimes, felt as though she couldn't see anything beyond the laundry, the bills, the local news. I will admit that she considered my investigation to be, at best, the product of obsession, and at worst, a convenient way by which I could avoid the burdens of fatherhood. In the interest of full disclosure, I will admit that since I lost my job, I had not been able to provide for my family in any meaningful sense. Anna and I were once in love, but we married young. I was 20, she was 19, and since our wedding day, I had felt more and more estranged from her. I'd become depressed, and I wasn't much use around the house. Milo cried. He cried a lot. I would pick him up and try to play father, but he would scream and bawl till I could hardly stand it. There's truth to what she said, but there's truth to what I found. When I left for Bright Falls that night, I kissed my wife and boy for what I thought might be the last time, convinced that if I found what had appeared to me in my visions, then I would perish the way I had each night for months. Anna told me that if I returned, she and Milo would be gone, and I wouldn't be able to find them, that it was over between us. She begged me to stay, and as I walked out the door, she wished me dead. The visions were real, but perhaps I was a poor vessel for them. I didn't choose to be pulled into these events. Something happened in Bright Falls in the week before Deerfest last year. Just look at the Elderwood Visitor Center. A strange number of disappearances. The walking wounded who speak in repeating sentences and can no longer venture into light. Their photosensitivity so acute as to render a simple noontime stroll excruciating. This is not a cover-up orchestrated by mighty governmental agencies or their outsourced minions, but by silent and unanimous town consensus. No one will talk about it, and everyone concerned has chosen to go on with their lives as though they could bury their memories with their departed loved ones. At the time, I am still unaware of whether Alan Wake is dead, missing, or in hiding. There was one night when I was walking back to the Majestic on the Elderwood Trail, and I thought I saw a man that looked like Wake rounding a bend in the trail. I called out and started jogging, then running after him, and, while he seemed to walk at a steady and even pace, I was never able to catch up. There was even a brief moment in which he looked back, and I saw it was him. He just smiled at me as though he were letting me in on a big secret before rounding the bend. When I caught up, he'd vanished. Those closest to him have refused all requests for interviews, and I've only just recently persuaded his agent, Barry Wheeler, to drop his lawsuit. I stayed on in Bright Falls for weeks, even helped rebuild the devastation of the Elderwood Visitor Center caused by what some called bad weather, and others referred to as the worst kind of juju. Likewise, my attempts to locate Agent Nightingale have been fruitless. My dreams have stopped, and I consider my part in this matter complete. Before leaving Bright Falls, I threw my dream journal into the lake and hopefully returned my visions to their source. I want no part of that life anymore. By perhaps all measures, my search must be considered a failure. I've done my job, and I consider this book my torch. I pass it on to one of you, loyal readers, to continue the investigation and take it where I could not. When I finally left Bright Falls and returned to Madison, I looked for Anna and Milo. The apartment was empty, and Anna's family refused to answer my calls. They were gone, and I was abandoned alone. I searched for almost a year before finally making contact. I now work as an assistant in the basement of the university library, shelving books mostly, but occasionally fixing network problems and waking sleeping students at closing time. On those brief occasions when one of these students catches my eye, they look away too quickly, or they're over-polite. I get the sense they're afraid to catch what I have. Perhaps they look down on me with my anxious manner and ill-fitting clothes, convinced that I'm one of life's forgotten and poor beyond pity. I let them look down, smug with the pride of my secret. See, they don't understand what I have. They don't know that when I finish work, my back sore and my feet as heavy as cinder blocks, that I catch the bus to the other side of town where I climb 6 floors to a small but well-kept apartment. They have no idea that when I open that door and see my beautiful wife and boy look up at me and smile, that I am awash in the light and warmth of 1,000 suns. They can't understand that I have treasures beyond their imagining, that I am untouchable, alive, and that I walk in light. Clay Stewart. Just a book! You can definitely see a lot of plot lines that they had planned that they obviously expressed when this book was ghostwritten. I don't know who actually wrote the book. The book is all attributed to Clay Stewart. I'm sure if I looked it up I could find it, but I didn't. Lol. But yes, there's a lot of stuff that you could tell was supposed to be in the game but wasn't, and a lot of it's corroborated when you look at like developer interviews and such sense. Like a lot of the bird monsters and stuff they originally had planned. A lot of the Baba Yaga stuff, which a little bit makes it in, a little bit doesn't. But you know, they certainly made it a lot less Baba Yaga-esque. Good times though, good times. This can go away now. Thank you, Jesse. You were a good pal. You did a lot to help us. And now it's Christmas. Hey, Christmas. What's up? Alright, I'm gonna run some ads, and then we'll swap over to what's her face? To Dot Hack. We'll do a little Dot Hack switchy.